We've got David standing in front of a wanted poster to show his sense of humor because he's passionate about his work and sometimes perceived as serious, as you said, but a guy with a big heart. And the question I wanted to ask is about strength through difference, because working with you in your department, you're a real champion of recruiting and bringing in people who are very different. And your three top officer, Mike, Monty, and Mac, are each brilliant in their area, but very different kind of guys.
Yes.
And I know one of the things that's important for you is the humility of being transparent. And so most people would look at you and think, oh, this guy's perfect. He's a perfect servant leader. But in our experience, there's no such thing.
No.
Even Greenleaf would have said, no, that's not, it's a journey. So would you talk about that part of the challenge of how do you deal with the not perfectness of yourself? Because talking about servant leadership puts you on point. People expect a great deal more of you, but how do you deal with the falling short side that is there in each of us?
Well, that's a good question, and one of the reasons when I teach servant leadership to my colleagues and to my peers, I make it a very clear point that I'm not an expert about leadership and that I'm only a sojourner on the same road that they're on, and I want that to be clear up front. So many times when we see somebody who's published or somebody who's in the position of being the speaker and they have control of the podium and the mic, they may not perceive themselves as experts, but that's certainly the expectation of the people who are listening to them or reading about them. And I think the transparency is you have to make that known all the time. Even when I'm talking to new officers, I flat tell them, I give them out of my pocket, I tell them I want you to have these decision-making tools. I want you to see my personal contract, and I want to tell you I strive to do that every day, but I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but this is what I strive to do. I'm going to expect the same thing of you, and I hand them to them and say, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire, you hold my feet to the fire. And so there has to be a reciprocity in that process. It means that at the point you're dealing with issues where performance is not acceptable, and Greenleaf addresses that, and many of the people who have read Greenleaf have addressed that and who have written about him, is that you accept people for who they are as individuals, but you do not have to accept performance that is not up to par.
Right.
And he's very specific about that. And so we can talk about those things in a very realistic manner, and they ring true as authentic. And when I am disappointed in myself and the way I've done things, it's humility. It's humbling to me
Right.
to have to tell people I made a mistake.
Yes.
And I try to do that. I hope that it's always rings true and it's authentic. None of us likes to admit we're wrong. And even trying to do that in one's personal life, doing that with your children is extremely tough, and that's a good place to practice it. They don't expect you to be perfect, or they would never tell you that, but they do expect you to be an example. And I failed my family in that regard. I failed my peers sometimes in that regard. So you just have to be, as you said, transparent. You just have to admit it and go on, and you just can't back up. To people who have a religious foundation, none of them are going to tell you they're perfect. There's nothing within religious, whatever someone's religion is, there's nothing within the writings of the great religions that talk about perfection. Now, the people who try to strive for that always turn out to be people who are not healthy.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point, that accepting our frailties is a part of being human. And what I hear you say is the important thing is to invite feedback and then to make sure we're open to that feedback.
That's right, and that's the empathy that
Yes.
Greenleaf talks about. It's acceptance and empathy, which is the next step.
Yes.
And his listening is very much a part of that. So it's taking the time to listen to people. And as the boss, sometimes you want somebody to listen to you, not because you have a necessity to be understood, but because the cathartic experience being listened to and building strength is just important for people who are in positions of authority as it is for those who have to work for them.
Right, it's healing.
It is healing, and that's why healing is a part of Greenleaf's philosophy.